My name is Justine. It may say Alex, but my name is Justine Gilkin. I'm joined here by two experts on quoting insurance, E&S insurance, and food trucks in particular. We have Drew Hensley and Katherine Cole. So today, for this short webinar, we're very excited with spring upon us and warm weather to talk about the trends and the opportunities associated with all those food truck accounts. So we'll go over those, and then Drew's going to review Pathpoint's food truck coverage, along with a quick demonstration on how to quote food trucks with our new vertical retail and services. And then at the end, Katherine and Drew will answer all of your questions. So feel free to put those questions in the Q&A. We will get to those at the end. But let's get started, team. All right, so trends and opportunities. Let's talk about that. So first, I want to just go over what we define as a food truck or a concession stand. So essentially, meals on wheels. So food trucks, large motorized vehicle, a trailer, really there to transport, cook, prepare, serve, sell food, you name it. So your cheesesteaks, if you're from Philly like me, your pizza, tacos on wheels, you name it. But they often have onboard kitchens, prepare food from scratch, or they reheat the prepared food. Then you have your concession trailers or your stalls, your standalone kiosks, stands that sell beverages and food. They're larger than food carts and can accommodate 2 to 3 workers there, but they can be towed by a vehicle to particular locations like your carnivals, your events, your festivals. And the concession trailers can have a full menu like a brick and mortar restaurant and are suitable for long-term space leases and large catering events. So we're seeing more and more of these. If you go anywhere in Main Street, USA, you're going to see about 5 to 10 food trucks or concessionaire stands if you go outside of your workspace. So it's a great opportunity to really prospect and bring in new accounts to your book. So let's talk about the market and the opportunity here. So there's over 36,000 food trucks as of last year in the US. And of course, the top states are the big kahunas per usual, California, Texas, and Florida, but we're really seeing more in a lot of states across the US. And it really depends on the permits and the laws and how affordable it is to start up. The average investment of a food truck is about $100 and will yield to $250,000, $500,000 in annual revenue. So it's really a minimal investment, less overhead, because if you think about restaurants, which typically many restaurants can go out of business within a year of getting started. But these food truck workers or these small businesses, there is a great opportunity to, with a small investment, to really start their passion project, their business on wheels with less overhead, less cost. You're not paying for the property exposures or you're not paying for a wait staff. It's really just the truck, the inventory, the location fees, and the permits. So it's a really good opportunity to start small and make a good living for half the price. And as I said, you can really find these food trucks anywhere you go. Katherine Drew, my favorite wedding, there was a barbecue food truck. They're everywhere. And more, especially the millennials, Gen Z, and baby boomers too, though, people ages from 25 to 44 really love these food trucks and really come back for the overall experiences and the uniqueness, because you're not going to find your regular hoagie or sandwich from a food truck. You're going to find new and interesting recipes. And about 80% of the food truck customers patronize these food trucks because of that experience. They really value the uniqueness. And it's just a great opportunity. And as I said, the age range 25 to 44 makes nearly half of food truck sales. And a fun fact too, immigrants, 30% are food truck owners. So it's a great opportunity. And as you can see, is expected to hit near 2 billion by 2030. So it's a great opportunity for all of you to get out there, prospect, and bring more accounts into your book. So I've talked a lot about trends and opportunities, but let's get into the meat and potatoes of food trucks with Drew on the coverages.
Thank you so much, Justine. Everybody hear me okay? Thumbs up. Good, good, good. Well, everybody, nice to kind of meet you. I'm Drew Hemsley. I'm the product manager that was involved with releasing food trucks, to quote, within Pathpoint. Very excited to showcase with you a little bit more about the coverage and getting in depth in terms of the actual account submission experience in Pathpoint, which I'll be demonstrating as well. So we'll go ahead and get right into this. Oh, sorry, we'll go back one. Let's see here. Sorry, here we go, appetite. So the first thing to know is that there's going to be some bullets here. We wanted to surface kind of the most pertinent information regarding appetite, where we're in appetite, where we may not be. But also there's some tips and tricks that I'll share with you a little bit later, as well as just going through the submission flow to kind of show you the ins and outs there. First thing to note is that new ventures are in appetite. We are a market for new ventures. Slight caveat there, anything less than 3 years experience will submit with one carrier, but we find that to be not consistent with the majority of applications we've seen. So new ventures were definitely a market. Yeah, so in terms of just kind of going with what Justine had mentioned, food trucks, mobile canteens, mobile concessions, refreshment stands, all must be served from either a motorized vehicle where the food is prepared and then served to customers, or from a non-motorized cart towed by the vehicle. So those concession trailers, et cetera. There is no cap on food or beverage sales. We're a market regardless of gross sales there. And of course, we are a market for up to 30% gross receipts that are alcohol sales, provided liquor liability is in place. And then, of course, we have to have auto liability in place, full compliance with all state, local regulation statutes for food truck operations for sure. Okay, moving on here. Okay, so let's talk about coverages and limits. So general liability up to 1 or 2 million, depending on the limits you'd like there. Products completed operations up to 2 million. Let's talk a little bit about inland marine coverage. So we did launch this with inland marine coverage as an optional endorsement on the application. Limits will differ here, rather, depending on the carrier quoting. So right now we are a market with 2 carriers. We hope to bring more of our carriers to quote food trucks in the future. But I will get into some tips and tricks about inland marine coverages and limits depending on carriers quoting once we get into kind of the demo submission flow. So for contractors' equipment, how we send information pertaining to the food trailer itself if inland marine coverage is requested. We have a 50K limit through the integration with our carrier for now. I'll detail a bit more later there. And then if what we're scheduling and sending through is miscellaneous tools and equipment, we have a limit of up to $1,500 per item, or 25K max limit for kind of that blanket scheduled list of extra things that are submitted for inland marine coverage. This can include compressors, generators, signage, inventory, et cetera. So again, we'll get into this as we get into the demo submission. Let's talk a little bit about where we are not a market for these risks. So ice cream trucks. This one is a little interesting. We went back and forth on kind of the wording of the question within the application flow and Pathpoint. So ice cream trucks that are in neighborhoods, moving around the block, not a market, right? But if the ice cream truck is perhaps a trailer that is sitting at an event, stationary, engine turned off, we are a market. So keep that in mind. We will be releasing subsequent improvements to the question set just to make that more clear, but just keep that in mind for those of you here. Motorized food carts, not a market. Again, we can provide general liability coverage for the food cart or for the food truck itself, but the food cart that serves food being towed by the vehicle must not be motorized. Mopeds, skateboards, and scooters. Some of this is pretty straightforward, pretty intuitive. Personal mobility devices, oxygen bars, any risk without auto liability insurance, we are not a market for. And then anything that, primarily, kind of more than incidentally is selling alcohol as part of their operations, we are not a market. Of course, make sure the liquor liability is there if that is the case. And I think at this point, we should be about ready to get into the demonstration. Great. So I'm going to share my screen here and show you guys the goods. Okay. Should see the Pathpoint dashboard. We good? Awesome. Okay, so for those of you familiar with Pathpoint, this dashboard should be somewhat, recognizable to you. This is where you go when you first log in. And of course, if you have applications or submissions pending, they'll show up here in this database, in this table view. You can see I've already quoted food trucks rule, and I'm going to just kind of go through that flow from beginning to end. One thing that we didn't really mention as part of this webinar is that this classification of food trucks is within our brand new vertical for retail and services. So if you click the Start Submission button here, you can see there is a new offering for retail and services, within which right now we only have general liability as the available product. We are launching many more classifications very soon within that vertical there, so that you guys can benefit from not only GL coverage, but property, package, etc. So getting into this actual quoted submission for food trucks, this is what's called our quote review page. So I'm actually going to work a little bit backwards here. You can see that we do have both of our carriers in appetite that did quote this risk. So going back to the beginning of the submission flow to see how we got here, once you click that retail and services option in coverages, you'll be brought here. Obviously, food trucks and trailers, mobile concessions, this is the only classification we have available within that vertical now. So we'll go ahead and get right through this. And again, if you're familiar with Pathpoint, you're familiar somewhat with our submission flow. We get some general information about the insured, their address, kind of who they are, as well as just some sort of general information about any past losses in GL, et cetera. Moving on to eligibility here, this next section of the submission flow really comprises the meat and bones for food trucks. This is where we ascertain whether or not we are a market. Please keep in mind, up here in the top left corner, you'll see this green in appetite indicator. This tells you that up until this point, you're still a market. We're still a market at Pathpoint for the risk. And of course, if for whatever reason your application is knocked out of appetite, on quote review, we will detail to you what knocked it out of appetite, and we'll give you a reason for that. So you can work with your clients on, just maybe clarifying a little bit more. Anyway, so we start up here. Have food truck operations ever exceeded more than $5 million in a calendar year? Obviously, the answer there is no. We, rarely, if ever, will see that kind of a risk or an account that way. But these are just questions, again, meant to ascertain whether or not we're a market. So going through this flow, obviously, we need the applicant to be in compliance with all laws and local regulations and statutes. All the necessary permits must be in place. Any operations that are conducted for an airport or an airstrip, a railroad, et cetera, we are not a market. So there we'd like to hit no. This is the happy path, is what we call it, the happy path submission. Applicant here has at least 3 years experience, et cetera. You'll find this submission flow, especially if you're familiar with Pathpoint, to be a lot shorter than other products. And we wanted to really optimize for quick submitting with these accounts. And so you'll notice that instead of asking what food items are sold, we actually just ask, okay, are any of these sold? And if so, we may not be a market. So again, we really wanted to emphasize and focus on speed to submit to get those quotes back quickly. So again, here, in this case, we're not selling any of the above. We're selling food. That's it. And then obviously any of these might knock us out of appetite. We're going to hit none of the above here. And we go to next to exposure. So here, pretty common. This is just information on the exposure itself. This could be the ghost restaurant, for example, that provides, the food truck itself, entering in this information. And then of course, gross sales as the exposure and rating basis here. We'll say 150 in gross sales is what we're pulling in. And then coverage details, right? This is where you can request your limits for general liability. And then as you scroll down here, you'll notice that there is a food truck specific inland marine endorsement. So now I'm going to kind of get into some tips before actually talking through a few more, but just to make sure that this is very well known, this sublimit selection, this applies actually to one of our two carriers that are quoting food trucks. In this case, the $25,000 limit on miscellaneous equipment actually applies to everything that is not the food cart or trailer. So everything from equipment down is subject to this sublimit, and in this case, $1,500 per checkbox item. Now, something interesting, we have been working with our carriers with which we are integrated. We are going to be paying very close attention to the value of these items that are sent through. Our carrier partners are very, very aware. 1,500 might be a little low to start. If we need to increase that, we can. And so we're very excited to kind of see what you guys submit and the type of coverage that's being selected. So moving on, obviously, there are some items here that are not in appetite for inland marine coverage, computers or laptops, for example, that would render inland marine ineligible. But in this case, we've requested inland marine for the food cart or trailer, equipment, inventory, and display boards or signage. There's just some extra questions here towards the bottom meant to ascertain, if there's been any losses on these items, et cetera. Here we ask for the value of the non-motorized food cart or trailer. This question will only appear if inland marine is requested for the food cart or trailer. These questions kind of change depending on what's selected. And again, we wanted to kind of reduce the amount of on-screen text, make it not as cognitively heavy on users using it. But in this case, we input 40K for the trailer's value. Again, with the integration we have with our markets, the sublimit for the trailer itself is 50K max. But for Crum & Forster, one of our carriers, that limit is actually much higher. Below here, we do want to schedule the food trailer. This is required for rating. We want to make sure that we can give information, a description, the make, model, and the year of the food trailer, and then some additional questions. Note here that if theft coverage is wanted to be procured for items that were selected for inland marine coverage, procuring theft coverage on equipment being stored out in the open is not an appetite. So just please make sure your applicants and your clients are storing their items safely and securely indoors when they're done for the day, et cetera. Moving through this, we are here to the point where we can review our submission. We can kind of go through a detailed look at all the answers to our questions here. We're going to go ahead and go to our quote review page. And you can see that for this submission, Nautilus, our integrated carrier, quoted as requested. These tags mean very specific things and really are meant to inform users about endorsements and whether or not there have been modifications made to the submission in order to get a quote back. One thing to mention is that for the launch of food trucks, there's still some pieces we're working out with Crum & Forster's systems with which we're integrating to provide inland marine coverage automatically through this integration. However, even though this quote excludes inland marine coverage, even though it was requested, Pathpoint will work with you to manually quote inland marine with you in conjunction with our underwriting team. So please reach out to your account manager. Please reach out to Pathpoint. If you really prefer the Crum quote and you want to see what the premium impact would be to add inland marine, or if you need higher limits, please reach out to us. We can get this worked out. So clicking into this quote, you can see that the quote letter will comprise GL as well as inland marine coverage. And once you get through subjectivities, you can request to bind and get that policy issued. So at this point, I will turn it back to Justine. I believe. Go ahead and turn this back. Okay. And what we're going to do now is talk through some key rating tips in addition to the demonstration. So we touched a lot on kind of the eligibility criteria as well as inland marine, how to get that endorsement quoted automatically with one of our two carriers right now. I think we've touched on this already, this first bullet. If applicable, the trailer being pulled by the truck must not be motorized, and that's very important. And then, as I mentioned just now, inland marine with Crum & Forster will quote, just not automatically through Pathpoint to start. We do want you to reach out to Pathpoint, make sure that we're getting you guys the quotes you need. Nautilus, however, is automatically quoting inland marine through the integration we have in addition to GL. The schedule. So the way that we do this is we actually are considering the food trailer itself to be its own scheduled item that gets sent through to our carrier partners for rating. And then, as I explained, everything underneath that first checkbox, every miscellaneous tool or item, that's actually bundled and sent through. And we actually worked out custom limits to get our carrier partners to automatically quote this through the integration. So very excited to get some feedback around that as you guys start submitting these accounts. Yes, and then obviously the last bullet here, theft on items stored in the open would be a declination from our carriers. So please, for inland marine anyway, so please make sure that, if that coverage is requested, make sure those items are being stored safely and securely indoors. And I think that's all we got for now. Turn the time back over to Justine.
Yeah. So now we're just going to wrap up real quick with some Q&A. But before we get to the Q&A, I just want to thank all of you for attending today's webinar. We'll make sure to post this on our YouTube page. So make sure you follow Pathpoint on YouTube and LinkedIn, where you can see all recordings and webinars and more fun stuff. But if you want to quote retail and services, food trucks, make sure to go to pathpoint.com. A little fairy told me, Drew and Catherine, that we're adding more classes to the retail and services. So I'll let you two answer what's coming up. But as a reminder, all food truck binders count toward our ultimate giveaway getaway. So if you're not familiar with that, Pathpoint is giving away a $10,000 vacation of your choice to the agent with the most submissions and binders through the quarter through May 15th, I believe. So any submissions, any binders count toward that, especially those food trucks. So get those in. And if you don't win the grand prize, there's a great staycation package for, I think, $1,000 where you can choose to use for your ultimate staycation. So a lot of fun there. But if you have any questions or want to get those Crum and Forster higher limits, anything you need, reach out to your account manager. And then, of course, look out for those new releases each week as we add those toward the spring. But it looks like, Catherine, you've done a great job already answering some of these. So I'll just review some of these questions here. First one I see is client-facing marketing pieces. So yes, reach out to your account manager. We're also posting more and more marketing pieces in addition to our social media accounts like LinkedIn. If you go to our help center, our resource center, you can find, for instance, if you were to search a certain vertical, we usually tag those in there. But if you can't find anything or you're on the go, reach out to your account manager. They can send that to you. Drew, we do have questions, and Catherine, about the sublimit section. So can you just review the sublimits for inland marine per item and schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So I apologize for going through that pretty quickly. Can definitely detail that. So the sublimit selection on the submission screen when you're in Pathpoint, that applies to the miscellaneous items that are not the first checkbox of the trailer. So if you want a $5,000, $10,000, or $25,000, the limit per checkbox item will change. That is specific to Crum and Forster. Now, if you recall, Crum and Forster will not automatically quote inland marine through Pathpoint at this time, but we still gather that information in order to procure a manual quote for inland marine in conjunction with GL. So just to kind of emphasize that, that dropdown where it asks you to select your sublimit, that actually doesn't do anything in terms of inland marine eligibility with our other carrier who's partnering with us to quote food trucks, Nautilus. So in Nautilus's case, it's just $1,500 is the limit per checkbox item that is other than the food trailer. And then, yes, so to answer, I think it was, whose question was it?
It was David's.
So David, I think it was your question. It's $1,500 per checkbox item other than the trailer. The trailer's limit itself is $50,000. So if the trailer's value is above $50,000, Nautilus will not be able to automatically quote inland marine on top of GL. However, Crum is still a market for that. They have a limit of up to $300,000 for the food trailer. So we can get you guys we can work you guys with our underwriting team to get that inland marine quote added manually. You'll just have to reach out to us if that's the case, and we'll get you taken care of. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, let us know, David, if that doesn't. We do have a part 2 now. This is for both of you. So the question is, should we use the regular location for rating purposes? Home, business address. Do you require ANSEL or fire suppression systems over grills? And are deep fat fryers okay?
That is a good question. Area address, home business address. I don't know. Kat, what would you say about the address there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. For address, go ahead and put wherever that's going to be spending the most amount of time. So if that's at a storage facility, if that's going to be at someone's home, parked in a distinct parking lot somewhere, that would be helpful.
Okay, and then part two, fire suppression systems for grills, deep fat fryers. What is, say that 3 times fast, that's really hard. What are the requirements for fryers and suppression systems?
That's a great question. In reviewing underwriting guidelines with our carriers that quote food trucks, the requirement specifically was that there must be an automatic fire extinguishing system in place for all food truck operations, and that the public must be protected from open heat sources for preparing food at all times during hours of operation. So those are the 2 really eligibility criteria and questions around, fire, taking care of heat sources. So yes, deep fat fryers are okay. And I don't believe that Ansel is required in this case. I think as long as the automatic fire extinguishing system is in place there, we should be good to go, and we'd still be a market there.
Perfect. All
Great.
right. Catherine, this seems like a question for you. What is the difference between admitted and a non-admitted carrier?
That is a great question. So an admitted carrier is going to be one that is licensed specifically to do business in a state, whereas excess and surplus markets are not going to have those same filings, and that's due to the differentiation in rates that you're going to find in a non-admitted market. An easy way to tell if they're admitted or not admitted is just to see if they are an E&S market, is also what non-admitted is known as. And they're going to be rated by like AM Best as well. So you can see what their financial solvency is like.
Perfect. And fun fact, Pathpoint, we only work with secure AM Best A-rated or better carriers. So reliable coverages there. Great question. Another question we have, is food truck physical damage covered while in transit? Katherine Drew, what's the answer to that?
I'm not 100% on this, and I can find out, Stacey, get back to you. But I would think that would need to be covered by an auto insurance policy if damage in transit. But Drew, do you have anything to?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I believe that would be covered with auto liability coverage.
Yes.
We can get back to you on that, Stacey. That's a really good question.
That is a great question. Yeah. So of course, Pathpoint, we cover the GL, the inland marine, but auto liability you need to purchase elsewhere. Great question, Stacey. We will email these questions to you. Yes. So here's another question, Catherine. This looks like for you. Will your carriers add additional insured CG 2011 for the leased area landlord? Drew, you can answer that too if you know it.
I'm going to let Kat go with that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are able to add vendors certificates, which I believe would cover what that landlord policy would be asking, or landlord would be asking for in terms of additional insured.
Fabulous. Okay, and now we have a 2-part question. Are you requiring the baffles between the fryer and open flames? And if so, how high?
The answer to that, I guess, is no. I mean, as long, again, as the public is protected from all heat sources and there's an automatic fire extinguishing system in place, you're good to go. So there's no questions around that. There's no eligibility criteria around that specifically. So we should be safe there. Good question.
All right. And do we write food trucks in California? Drew, do we write food trucks in all 50 states?
Oh, yeah.
So California, top state, send them over, put online. Okay, I'm just going through all of these. Can the insured have multiple locations of a business? If so, which location should we put it under?
Let's see here. So if they're going to have like multiple food trucks in different locations, I would go ahead and put, I guess I'll ask Drew this because I am not for sure, but can you add multiple food trucks on one policy?
You can. So that exposures page, you are able to add multiple exposures there. However, right now there is a bug we're working out where right now we're unable to add an additional exposure. There is a fix that we've pushed for that. It should be live shortly, But yes, as long as all of the other eligibility criteria are met, you are able to add multiple exposures to the application in Pathpoint for sure.
All right, multiple exposures. And what if it's just the food truck with multiple spots it serves? Great questions.
Yeah, so that policy is going to go ahead and follow that business wherever they might be. What we want to know is the general area that they're going to be doing businesses and where they're storing the truck full time. But really, wherever that food truck is going in the US, that policy is going to follow it.
All right, well, these were some great questions. So if you have any other questions, reach out to your account manager, use the chat feature on our website, or you could even check our help center. But I want to thank all of you on behalf of Drew, Catherine, myself, and everyone at Pathpoint. We hope you enjoy the new vertical. We'll make sure to answer these questions on the side here, but we hope you have a wonderful Wednesday and a good time quoting those food trucks.
Oh, and David, quick answer for you on getting appointed. Pathpoint has a very seamless appointment agreement workflow. If you create an account with us, it should take you less than a few minutes to get that paperwork signed and get yourself appointed for your agency. So go ahead and get signed up. We'll get you going.
Yeah, perfect. All right, well, have a great day, everyone.